Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and good morning, everybody. So I appreciate the opportunity to tell folks about the U.S. Department of State, maybe take away some of the myth and mystery, and help you understand our mission and how we do business, and provide a path to identifying opportunities to doing business with the department. So quickly before we get started, just some housekeeping. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I think that Yasmin will interrupt me, and if there are any questions pertinent to what I'm saying, I would rather explain it as we go along. So the point is not to leave you wondering what happened, but rather to be as relevant and have this information as useful to you so that it's actionable. If you have any questions afterwards or would like to set up a time for a capabilities briefing, use my email address. It's right here on the screen, urmana@state.gov. Send me a note, and the more specific your question, the better I could provide an answer. So with that, let me go ahead with the interview, with the presentation. We've got about an hour, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you going forward. All right. So first, the interview and our mission. The Department of State is one of the oldest departments, one of the oldest cabinet-level agencies of the U.S. federal government. And our role is to fight terrorism, protect U.S. interests abroad, and implement the U.S. foreign policy to build a freer, prosperous, and a secure world. If that sounds like a pretty daunting and important mission, it is. But for the purposes of procurement and for the purposes of understanding how to sell to us or how to partner with us, what I would like to do going forward is to break down this mission into specific responsibilities and bureau-focused missions for the department, because it is very rare that you will be selling everything. So a product or a service for the whole department to the whole department at the same time. So at such a high level, it's important for you to understand the mission, but that really isn't necessarily, or even necessarily primarily, the mission of the specific bureau or office that you're selling to. So who is it that you're selling to? First of all, it is human beings, and there's a lot of them. At the Department of State, we have 39 bureaus. That changes a little bit with every administration. Sometimes bureaus are added for specific topics or issues, such as, for example, the Bureau or the Office of Climate or the gender and women's issues that have been stood up recently. We also have different presences in many countries and cities around the world. That changes with the geographic climate, whether there are new countries that receive independence, or there may be a world situation requiring us to close down an embassy or evacuate. So those numbers are, on the aggregate, pretty steady, but sometimes things change. And part of our mission, this could be exciting or this could be a challenge. Part of our mission is very much driven by world diplomacy, world events, and sometimes we have no control over what happens to our folks. So the department employs 90,000 people, and there are different kinds of employees, different roles that folks play at the department. There's the Foreign Service, which are comprised of most of the leadership of the department at the bureau and at the top leadership level are Foreign Service. That's the diplomatic corps. And as part of their job, they change posts, they change countries and continents on a pretty regular basis. The reason it's important to you is as you are developing a relationship with a particular program or office, it is always important to know how long you have with that man or woman before they go on to their next post. because you don't want to invest your time and resources into a relationship that you lose all of a sudden. So ask your customer or contact where they've been, where they're going. Ask them who else is at the same post and maybe a deputy, so that you are investing in a relationship that will pay off in the long run, both with people that are remaining at the specific bureau, post, location, or office where you are trying to sell to, and also follow that new connection wherever they are in the world, in case there may be an opportunity for you and an opportunity for them to work with you in their next assignment. The posts that folks take on, the Foreign Service take on, are not necessarily in other countries. There are many opportunities and many responsibilities for bureaus and offices based in the United States, mainly in the DC metro area, but a couple of other places around the country as well. In addition to Foreign Service, there is a strong, significant civil service workforce. I'm one of those guys. And think of the back office, think of the all the administrative tasks, human resources, accounting, purchasing, logistics. Those tend to not switch jobs as much. We are more steady. We do not go to different countries. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's, sometimes we feel a little bit jealous of the colleagues, depending on where they are. But understand that if your customer or your touch point is a civil servant, they have different responsibilities and different mission tasks. The other kinds of folks that we employ or we're accountable for is the locally employed staff, or LESs. Those are usually foreign nationals that are employed at the embassies or missions where we're stationed. So for some tasks, there's no reason to have Americans fly to a different part of the world to perform tasks that could be done by a local citizen. Some tasks that require facilities clearances or require individuals to be cleared, we will employ only Americans and American contractors to perform some of those tasks. So it depends on the job requirements. And two others, we have employee family members, or the formerly was called trailing spouse. So the family members of our Foreign Service we are able to find them job and employment opportunities with the department as they follow their family around the world. And the last type of person at the Department of State is our contractors. We love them. Many times we have a very seamless relationship with our support contractors, whether they're doing construction or administrative services, or even providing some technical skills or professional services. And there's a significant and enduring need for contractor support at the department, as you'll see based on the opportunities and requirements that I'll be briefing on today. So that makes up our 90,000 people around the world. The department spends around around $10 billion on products and services every year. That's just on contracts. It's about it was about 9.7 in FY21. It's going to be similar, maybe a little bit higher this year, and it's been pretty steady on a slight upward trend over the last couple of years. So let me pause here. I'm going to check in with Yasmin. There's been a lot of chat. Are there any questions for me so far?
Hi, Anna. No questions as yet. I'd just like to welcome everybody who's joined us since we started, and just to inform you that you can type out your questions in the chat box and Anna will tackle them throughout the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, let's talk about the opportunities. The way to understand opportunities and start thinking about what the department will need next year is looking at our trends and our spending in the last few years. As a market research analyst and as a small business advocate, I recommend and continue to stand on the principle that the best way to figure out what's going to happen next year, next 2 years, is to look at the previous one. And we will mention the forecast, and I'll go over that as well. But following the dollars, I think, is the most useful way to understand the ongoing and predictable needs of our bureaus. So let me, I'm not going to read you the numbers. I think you can see the numbers. What I do want to go over are the names of the bureaus at the bottom of the screen. To understand our mission in the aggregate is not enough. You are selling, or you will be selling, to a specific office or bureau. And there are two kinds of, or two types of bureaus that the Department of State has. The first kind, and we'll spend most of our time talking about that, are the functional bureaus. So those are the bureaus that have a specific function, and they perform that function enterprise-wide, so worldwide, for the whole department. The other kind of bureaus that we have are regional bureaus, and they're focused on a specific geography, whether it is a physical presence in that geography or providing the knowledge, expertise, intelligence on a specific region of the world or specific country. The functional bureaus, because of their missions, because of their mandates, and because of their worldwide presence, are the ones that spend the most dollars. So likely, if you are trying to sell to the department and you're following the dollars, you want to understand those. The leads, the top 2 or 3 sometimes change spaces, but typically the largest 6 remain pretty steady. And I'll explain what their missions are. So first is diplomatic security. And everybody has an acronym. It's usually pretty simple. It's their, the first letters of their title. So diplomatic security, or DS. And we love our acronyms, and we usually use them in sentences without bothering to spell them out. I will do so here, and I will answer it as if you have any questions. But realize that if you are dealing with somebody at DS, they're not going to spell it out for you. So be prepared, do your homework, know what words they're using, or send a note to the Small Business Office asking for help. So, mission of diplomatic security. It is protecting our people and our assets, and that includes everything that you could think of as far as securing. So that is the vehicles that with shatterproof glass and explosion prevention at our buildings. That is concrete barriers. That is security guards at all the embassies. That also includes the special support systems and staff and analyses that they need, and some technology, specifically technology that has to do with security, such as anti-drone protection, CCTV cameras. They also work with other bureaus to ensure that all aspects of security at the department are minded and protected. So some of our requirements, for example, for data security or cybersecurity, may be handled by DS, and some by other bureaus. And I'll mention those as we go along. Is there a question? I heard some.
No, it wasn't a question. It's just some interference.
Okay. Next bureau is Overseas Buildings Operations, or OBO, Overseas Buildings Operations. And they are the architects, engineers, and construction experts that build, maintain, update, remodel all of our facilities around the world. Most of their work is overseas. There are some buildings in the U.S. that OBO maintains, but typically U.S.-based properties are owned by or leased by the General Services Administration. So there is relatively a smaller percentage of domestic building construction, design build kind of work. But about a quarter of our budget is spent on construction all around the world. And a lot of that is outsourced. That is one of those hidden secret things that is not so secret once you start digging into the numbers. But Department of State spends a lot on construction, engineering, and facilities management. Next, Bureau of Consular Affairs, or CA. Those are the folks that process your visas or process your passports. Their budget has taken a hit during COVID because there was less travel. And if you've ever had to get a passport, you send a check along with it. So some of their funding is based on revenues. So when there's no travel and there's no revenues, there's less of a demand for it, so less spending, but there's also less money to work with. Now, that being said, there are some ongoing, significant ongoing work that is being performed by consular affairs. There's still a significant need for passports, and some of it is, some of the surges have been promulgated by the recent world events, both Afghanistan and Ukraine. So there are surges, again, led by world events here as well. Also, Consular Affairs is undertaking a significant effort to look at their systems and applications, and even some of the questions and requirements for visas and passports in connection with the recent President Biden's executive order on equity and access for underserved communities. So making sure that everybody is represented and has fair access to our passport and visa process. And they're putting forth some significant initiatives for that. For example, adding the gender X option to the passport application was, I think, the first step that they did. The next bureau is IRM, Information Resource Management. That's the IT bureau. That is where the Chief Information Officer sits, and they are responsible for all of our enterprise-wide information technology requirements. Most of it is done directly by IRM. Some of our IT requirements that are bureau-specific or bureau budgeted, IRM still has oversight over, and they have to sign off, and they're in the what's called the clearance path. They review and ensure that those specific systems or processes still are integrated with the department's security posture and are compatible with our hardware, software, and network technology. IRM works a lot with DS. See that sentence? Entirely acronym. So the Bureau of Information Resource Management works with the Bureau of Diplomatic Security to ensure that our enterprise is secure and that our government devices, our personal devices that we use sometimes, especially in telework, to log into our job duties, and the mobile devices, that all of those are secure, that they're connecting to the network in a secure manner, and then the network nodes and the protocols and the firewalls are all set up, and that we have some proactive intrusion detection, and we protect against threats and cyber attacks, which happen quite often. There are staggering numbers of those attempts every single day on our network. On occasion, one of them gets through, and that's on the news. But most of the ones, the vast majority of them are not in the news because we do a pretty good job of protecting against them. Next, a bureau is International Narcotics and Law Enforcement. One of those hidden gems that provides a lot of support and buys a lot of different kinds of services and products around the world. INL's mission is helping other countries' law enforcement and police organizations fight crime and fight drugs in their respective countries. So just for some examples of the kind of products and services they buy, training for police officers, capacity building, and even barracks and standing up protocols for law enforcement organizations. They buy, some interesting ones, boat motors for Coast Guard boats, for other countries' Coast Guards, vests for police canines, some agricultural equipment to take into the field and cut down drug production plants and plantations. So as you can see, just from these scattered examples, a variety of different needs. And most folks don't know that INL exists. They are, by the number of people and by the number of, well, by the amount of dollars, they're one of the largest, if not the largest, law enforcement organization in the world. INL operates mostly overseas. They have some administrative, some leadership presence in the U.S., DC, and then in Florida, but most of their work and most of their contract support is going to be OCONUS. Bureau of Administration, or a bureau, that is logistics, that is domestic facilities management. It is all of the back office roles like timekeeping and budgeting and financing, contract administration. They have enterprise-wide responsibility to ensure that all the other bureaus have what they need to function. So a lot of disparate responsibilities, but pretty significant and pretty steady. The next bureau is Population, Refugees, and Migration, or PRM Bureau. This one has not been on the top 10 list until quite recently. The most significant recent budget addition to put them into the top 10 was the response effort for Afghanistan. I expect that the ongoing effort from that spilled into FY22, and also the aid for Ukraine, Eastern Europe, is going to keep PRM at the top of our or in the top 10 list for the short, at least the next year or two, and hopefully no big worldwide crises. But that is where things change, and we shift and we align funds. Last week, President Biden signed a $40 billion aid package. I think $16 billion of that is going to the Department of State. I don't know yet how that's going to be spent, but my educated guess is that PRM will be receiving and working with at least a portion of that money. The next couple are our largest regional bureaus: Near Eastern Affairs, African and South Central Asian Affairs. Their budgets vary based on what is happening in the world, but also just based on the sheer number of missions, facilities, and people, and the relevant support contracts for those regional operations. And those vary. They perform different kinds of activities in diplomacy with the foreign governments and the foreign population. So their needs for intelligence and outreach and economic development in those areas vary significantly, and vary based on what is the presidential imperative with respect to foreign policy and what is needed by the host countries as well. So that's a quick overview of the bureaus, and I'm going to shift gears and talk about the products and the services in a second.
Hi, Anna. We do have some questions if you want to pause to do some Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay, first question is, if we want to do business with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, do we reach out to the state?
That is a separate organization. They have their own, they're a quasi-government, so I don't know if they have an OSDBU, but they do have a small business outreach. I just forget the acronym, but they have their own presence. If you can't find them, send me a note. I'll see if I could look that up for you.
Okay, thanks. The next question is there a bureau that buys construction services?
Yes. So the slide is still up. If you're dialed in on phone, it's the Overseas Buildings Operations, or OBO. And their website is, I'll type it into the chat, but it's state.gov/ working with OPO.
Okay, thank you. And another, they said thank you, and thanks for putting that in the chat. Okay, this question, can you give any guidance on hub zone companies that do not hold any GWAC schedules that can target IT services at DOS? It seems that most opportunities on the forecast or on a schedule is the point of contact for IT simplified acquisitions.
Let's hold that one to the end, where I will discuss a bunch of resources about doing business with us, and some of it, I think it's a longer answer, and let's get back to it later if you don't mind.
Sure, that's fine. That's all the questions for now.
Okay, so let's shift to the what is it that we buy? What is that the bureaus buy? And by the way, my information, all of the data that I'm pulling is based on public resources, either SAM ad hoc reports or USAspending.gov. Both of those are free and accessible to industry as well. So this is not a secret or a different resource that you have at your disposal as well. And if you've used these sources, or have a BTAC counselor that use them with you, you could also drill down and understand the NAICS and CST codes even for the specific bureaus and offices that are relevant to you. But since we have a varied audience and I want to give you a general understanding, this is department-wide, so in the aggregate. So what do we buy a lot of? If I were to put our major acquisitions, major NAICS into a couple of buckets, buy a lot of IT, buy a lot of construction and facilities management, professional services, and probably logistics. So that is logistics of both physical goods, transportation kind, as well as moving people. So chartered, non-chartered air transportation. That is very much led by world events. If we need to evacuate a lot of people really quickly, we spend a lot of money, procuring that. Our top vendors, pretty well aligned and kind of goes along with the NAICS codes as well as the bureaus, but you'll see that it is the professional services organizations and construction companies and IT companies that are the top vendors. Most of these are large businesses. One that is not on here is Cherokee Nation. They're an 8A company. One of the reasons they are a top 4 vendor for FY 2021 is they have a significant contract to provide relocation and life support services for refugees from Afghanistan. So all the Dulles and the other DC area housing and processing of refugees, that was a Cherokee contract, or that still is. I think it's still ongoing somewhat. So top 10 vendors are about just under 30% of the department's total spend. So significant subcontracting opportunities. Not saying they're easy subcontracting opportunities, so you do have to be strategic, but certainly we have subcontracting plans and small business participation plans that we're working on, and I'll share more about that in a later slide. So small business, actually, okay. Small business spend. So let's talk about the current, and current by that I mean FY 2021 small business obligations at the department. How do small businesses find contracts, or what, maybe to look at it from a different perspective? When the department awards contracts to small businesses, what kind of competition do we use? what we found, which may be surprising, is that more than half of our obligations, our awards to small businesses, were actually not a set-aside. They were unrestricted. So that means a small business won that particular work in a competition or in a direct award that was not a small business set-aside, not a socioeconomic set-aside, and not a simplified acquisitions purchase. What that means is if you're only looking at small business set-asides, you're missing out a significant potential market where you could be, your firm or your products or services could be viable and could be a very good potential avenue for the Department of State to buy from you. So look at the NAICS codes, look at the keywords as you're following the requirements, and don't limit yourself to just a small business set-aside. Now, as a small business advocate, I'll have to tell you, you always want to fight for a set-aside because that makes your competition success much easier, but don't just limit yourself to that as well. I glanced at the chat and I saw a question about simplified acquisitions process. Yes, we do buy a lot through SAP, especially our overseas posts. They have many of the posts do not have full-fledged contracting officers, which means they have a general service officer whose warrant is up to the threshold of the simplified acquisitions threshold, which is $250,000. So many of the services and products that posts buy directly are under the SAP. And they use a variety of methods to do that. Some through purchase card, a lot through Unison Marketplace, and also using the category management vehicles like GSA schedule, or the GSA map. Now, if you look at the small businesses by the different socioeconomic set-asides, so quick answer to a quick question. The threshold for simplified acquisition threshold is $250,000. There are exemptions in the FAR that are I think too detailed for us to go into, but 250K is the benchmark. So do we have a lot of sole source or do we have a lot of competition for small business? So this is just the obligation for small business. And I want to maybe emphasize the point that don't limit yourself to small business because a lot of the work that small businesses are winning and performing did not come through under a set-aside. But we do have a significant amount of small business set-asides. I'll talk about our goals in a bit, but most of our socioeconomic category set-asides are competed, with the exception of the 8A. And without going too much into the weeds of it, 8A is a special business development program. And there are requirements in the FAR that under a certain threshold, $4.5 million, it is a preference, a strong preference that 8A is awarded directly or sole source instead of competing. Above $4.5 million is where 8A competition is preferred, and there are some exemptions to that as well. So 8A has in the program's definition and in the program's intent, it has a strong tilt towards sole source. Within the other socioeconomic categories, it is mostly competed. There are occasional sole source, and if you have additional questions, we could talk about it if we have the time at the end. So if we take away the first without set-asides, just for illustration, if we just focus on the set-aside window, you'll see the breakout much more clearly, a delineation between competitive, which is the orange, and sole source, which is the gray, and just to give you an idea. So how do we decide on a small business set-aside? How does the department take our statutory goal and translate that to actual competitions or contracts? So first, every year, each federal agency negotiates with the Small Business Administration the total small business goal for that agency or department. And that is based on the government-wide goal and each agency's ability to ensure that the government as a whole gets to it, and also based on previous year's achievements. If in a prior year the government did X, then that X becomes kind of a baseline. You don't want a goal that is lower than what actually could happen, but you don't want it so high that everybody fails either. So the department's goal for FY 2022 is 28%. And I'll just talk about the prime contracting for now, and then I'll shift to the other column for subcontracting. The other socioeconomic goals have been historically set by statute, but because of President Biden's executive order on equity 13985 and OMB memo 0322 that came out in December of last year, the agencies now have a requirement to negotiate the goal for small disadvantaged business. So it used to be 5%. Now each agency goes through a very similar process with the SBA to negotiate what we can do. The government-wide SDB goal is 11%. The Department of State SDB goal, that small disadvantaged business goal, is 21%. And that is based on the fact that in the last several years, Department of State has achieved between 20 to 24% small disadvantaged business contracting. So our goal is based on the threshold and the achievement that we have had. The other goals have been set by statute. There have been proposed legislation in Congress to increase those goals. None of those have been implemented in the National Defense Authorization Act or passed into law in other ways. So that may change. Those may become actionable in the next couple of years. But we all just have to watch Congress. The subcontracting goals are negotiated again with the SBA for our top ones, the total small business subcontracting goals, and the remaining ones are set by statute. Because the SBB goal was changed in the middle of this year, we did not renegotiate the subcontracting goal. I don't know if that's going to change in the future years. I mean, logically, if I take off my government hat and I put on my government contracting analyst, it's probably going to change, but I don't know what that's going to be yet, or if it will actually change. How do we get to that? So what the department does is set up an order of preference every year. So if you look at the numbers in the column on the left, what we do is for every requirement that comes across our desk, and the OSDBU office reviews every requirement over the stat, every requirement over $250,000 that is competitive and that is not part of an existing State Department contract. So, for example, we do not review a task order under an existing State Department contract. But everything else, if it's over the stat, we look at the requirements, we check the homework to make sure that market research was conducted properly, that the documents are in order, and that the acquisition strategy makes sense. And we work with the contracting office to determine whether or not that requirement could be set aside based on our order of preference, which is first, can be set aside for women-owned, if not service disabled, if not hub zone, and if not 8A. And actually, based on our new renegotiated goal, because it was increased by over 400%, our SDB goal is number 3 and hub zone goal is number 4. So switch those numbers. If you're printing out, cross it out and put the right one in. But our order of preference is first WOSB, then SDVUSB, then SDB, which includes 8A, and then hub zone. If we cannot achieve that, if we cannot make the case for a set aside in any of those socioeconomic categories, then we try to see if we could set it aside for total small business or 100% small business. And if not, then it becomes an unrestricted requirement, which if it's over $750,000 has a subcontracting goal with it. The way that we determine order of preference is by looking at how we did with each of the socioeconomic categories in the prior fiscal year. So in FY 2020, we actually did not meet our WOSB goal. So that became our number one. Then we came closest to the margin on meeting our OSDBU goal. So that became our number two. Based on the renegotiated goal, our small disadvantaged business goal was the next one in line, the difference between percent achieved and percent goals, and then the hub zones. So that's, and every year, if you look at our achievements, you will very easily be able to discern what the order of preference is going to be for the next fiscal year. The order of preference typically does not change. We don't decide that at some point in the acquisitions life cycle that we are at, let's say, 28% small business, we are done. Because first of all, acquisitions keep happening, so the percentage is a moving target. And also our imperative is that we provide maximum practicable opportunity for every acquisition. And a prior acquisition has no bearing on small business opportunity for another different requirement. So let me see if there's questions about our goals and the numbers before we move to some of the tactics.
Yeah, there is a question. How does DOS plan to improve the awards to WOSBs?
Great question. So one is we're actually working on with the Office of the Procurement Executive to ensure that our awards under the SAT are afforded due care, because it is very easy to get an exemption under the SAT. It's supposed to go to small business, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So we're putting some checks in place to ensure that those are reviewed and that exemptions are valid, which they were almost a default before. So that's our number one. Two is just doing outreach and helping, ensuring that women-owned small businesses understand what's available and understand the opportunities. So we are doing a conference with the U.S. Women's Business Chamber in 2 weeks. I've participated in, I conduct about 5 or 6 webinars for the U.S. Women's Chamber every year, just teaching their constituency and helping them understand some similar to this presentation and some other ones. And we're also, just in our review of acquisitions, we are not letting precedent drive upcoming requirements. So just because it was full and open, or just because it was a total small business set aside, if we could make a case for women-owned small business, then we will do so. So the last part of that equation is, through all the outreach and through all these communications and education, is encouraging and strongly asking women-owned, economically disadvantaged women-owned businesses to respond to market research, RFIs, and sources sought. Because we cannot make the case to set things aside unless we can prove that we could meet the rule of 2. And so what does that mean? We have to have a good basis for determining that at least 2 responsive and responsible businesses will bid on a specific requirement. So if we have a source of thought that asks for specific questions and a couple of companies send in a generic capability statement, I can't fight. I cannot get that set aside. So be responsive, follow up, and let OSDBU know that you're responding, and encourage other, in this case, other WOSBs to respond as well. Because the more companies we have, the better we can substantiate a set aside. And then you have a smaller playing field, and then we could not guarantee, but have a reasonable expectation that women-owned small businesses will be able to bid and win the work. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
All right. So pursuing work at the department. How do you go about it? First of all, I mentioned at the beginning, and I can't emphasize it enough, understand the mission. It's not just buying IT services, it's buying information service to support a particular branch in an office with a mission. So understand what your customer cares about. And that is the bureau, not so much acquisition. Also understanding the environment of, if you deploy a specific IT system, or if you have an analyst working on an issue, what is it that they have to know? What is the environment and the universe that they're living in that will inform how they do their job, and what is the purpose of that person or that product or that service that you're providing. Understanding the Department of State acronyms that stems from the first bullet of the bureaus and the mission, but also just being able to talk the talk. We are a risk-averse agency because of our mission and because of our posture and our place in the world. So the experience, the expertise, the past performance is significant. Showing that you understand the program and the requirements, and even if you come in with a strong teaming partner, helps to relieve the fears that you may not know how to do the job or perform a mission or deliver on a certain timeline or with certain parameters. And when you're talking about the risk aversion and the mission focus, understand who your buyers are as human beings, right? You're not selling or you're not doing business development to a nameless room or building. It is people that have their own priorities, they have their own careers, and they may not, especially if you're working with program office, they may not understand contracting. Some of them think of contracting as another roadblock they have to get through in order to get things done. So as you're working with them and networking and doing business development and trying to sell to them, figure out what is their pain point within the process, what questions you could answer. To that effect, having vehicles, having partners, having existing solutions certainly helps get them to their answer and meet their challenge faster. I also mentioned when I was talking about the State Department folks is that understand the people's understand your prospects or your targets career path and their changes, so that you're able to develop and retain the relationships even as they leave their postings for a different country. So you have some additional relationships, additional people that you're talking to at that specific office, and also are able to translate that relationship with the person that left to wherever they're going next. And to that risk aversion and to our general awareness of world events, both digital as well as physical, security and everything is paramount. So securities clearance, facility security clearance will be a requirement on many of our services, including professional services contracts, including many construction contracts as well. Not so much an issue with the products that are just being shipped, but with services, it is absolutely a requirement. Not on everything, but on a lot. What are the opportunities? And I will, I'll address the sources of, yeah, I will. So how do you look for opportunities? the first one, and if you're new to Department of State, we strongly encourage teaming and subcontracting for a number of reasons, facility security being one of them. But we are working on a couple of innovative approaches to help small businesses find work and be successful at the department. One is we are taking a lesson from DoD and implementing small business participation plans as an award evaluation criteria. So in addition to a subcontracting plan, it's a commitment based on a total percent of award value, or percent of total contract value or total award value. So instead of where the subcontracting plan, where the requirement is a percent of the dollars that are being subcontracted, in the participation plan, it's the percent of the whole award. And we are implementing it on some of our larger requirements that are coming down, like Evolve, like ILMS, if you're following Department of State and you know that those some of the bigger ones. And we are requiring proof. And then what we're able to do, because it's an evaluation factor, is we're adding that to the CFARs. So primes are graded on twice a year on how they're doing with respect to meeting their commitment to small businesses. I mentioned the executive order, small business goals, so I'll skip over that in the interest of time, and I think we've covered that. Some of the major requirements, ILMS with A Bureau, that's logistics management. Evolve with IRM, that's information resource management, that's our major enterprise-wide IT. That's pre-RFP. We're expecting the RFP to come out within the next month or so. It's been delayed, unfortunately. And worldwide global cap is a big one. It's a recompete of a contract called AfriCap, and it's for logistics, capacity building, and training worldwide, focused in Africa, but I think it's expanded in its geographic scope. You could find all of the pre-RFP market research documents and some industry day information on all of those on SAM. We are doing more and more outreach, so our small business page, but also follow the LinkedIn, that is past. Follow the LinkedIn page for the Office of the Procurement Executive and the State Department Industry Liaison. They're posting more and more information on there. And I wrote this before April 28th, but our next small business events, the next one is June 9th in Charleston, South Carolina, and August 24th, which will be virtual. I just posted it to our events page this morning. So August 24th, it will be a virtual subcontracting focused conference. So I recommend that one. Because we just have a few minutes left, I will let you guys do the homework here. I want to point out that we have the procurement forecast, which is published once a year. The most interesting part there is the contact information for the program offices. Send them an email. Feel free to copy me on that email. Ask them specific questions. So asking for a briefing has not traditionally worked out. You still want to ask for that, but more specific questions like, do you still expect this to come out in Q4? What is the vehicle? Is there a public sources thought or an industry day? Who is the contracting office? So the more questions you could ask that they can answer quickly, the better chance that you'll get a response. If you're not getting a response from those POCs, forward that to me, and I'll see if I could find out the information for you. The other procurement resource I want to highlight is the DS 1910 publication. Every other week, we publish all the upcoming requirements that will be competitive that OSDBU has signed off on. So when the acquisition plan is complete, we agree with the acquisition strategy. We sign off, and then every other Tuesday or sometimes Wednesday, it gets added to our rolling table on the DS 1910 site, a report site. So you get a sense of what is coming up in the near future, what vehicle was set aside, so that'll give you more tactical go ahead for where to find those upcoming requirements. So some resources here that I think I'm going to let you read in the interest of time, and certainly if you have questions, you could follow up with me on that. But do understand that if you are bidding on something that is overseas or that requires some of the work or performance to be done outside of the United States, put into account and put into your accounting system and realize some of the other requirements and associated costs that may come with performing work overseas, such as licensing and insurance and local labor laws as well if you're employing staff. So just be aware of doing business overseas generally, and talking to other businesses that have been there and have done that could be a good resource for you. So I know we just have a few minutes left. I can't stay later if Yasmin lets me, but I would love to talk to you and answer some additional questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. That was a great presentation, very informative. So yeah, now is your opportunity to ask Anna your questions. So we do have some questions in the chat box. So let me scroll back up. Some of these you may have already addressed. One is, where is the best place to find DOS sources sought requests?
Sources sought are published on our SAM, or not our, but they're published on sam.gov. So I would, and I know sometimes it's a challenging place to search, but set up very specific alerts. I also, in my unofficial non-work time, I try to post sources sought to my personal LinkedIn page. It is not official. It is not a government site, so it's not a reliable source of information, but I do try to share the word. So if you want to follow me, you can. I just try to make it easier for folks to find it, because SAM can be a challenge.
Yeah, we definitely know that. So when you say the LinkedIn page, is this the same page that you mentioned earlier?
So I will put in the chat some official LinkedIn pages, but what I mean, myself and my personal page, just it's me.
Okay.
Urman, just find me.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, there's another question about a conference link and registration. Did you mention a conference?
Yes, I am posting that one right now. So there's a page. I just posted the small business page, which has all of these resources and more. And there is a tab for events, but I will just put the events tab in here to make it easy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Someone says, can you provide your contact information? Is it on the PowerPoint?
Yes, it's on the PowerPoint, and I'm putting in here as well.
Okay, and I'll be sending the PowerPoint out to you all shortly, so you'll have that and you can review the slides again if you wish to, or share them with your colleagues. Next question is, if you are a startup, is there a way to do business with the state?
That depends on what it is that you're providing. But unofficially, I'd say we're probably not the easiest agency to get in with, especially if you're providing professional services or IT, because of the clearance requirements. But again, it depends on what it is that you're doing. Ultimately, if you are the best at a particular product or service that a customer at Department of State needs, you should be able to compete for that and win the work. But there are tactics and strategies you can use, and teaming with existing companies. Now, when I mention teaming and subcontracting, I don't automatically mean go and talk to Peraton. I'm only picking on Peraton because they have a lot of contracts here. They're a big prime. I have, just picked a name out of the hat, literally. But there are many other companies and vendors, including some very successful small businesses doing work in the department. So if you sell a widget enhancer and there's a company providing widgets, they may be a small business, they may be a service disabled veteran-owned business, team with them because you complement each other. They could be offering something to their customers they don't already have, and you have an entry point into the government. It's not a prime contract, but it's still money, which is still green, and it allows you to earn that experience, get some relationships going with a potential customer that sets you up for additional opportunity. And take advantage of that, and then you could repay the favor and bring on your existing teaming partner to some other opportunities. What the large primes will want to see is that you have done some of this homework. The larger the prime, the more small businesses are looking to do business with them, the more small businesses are already doing business with them. So if you cannot differentiate yourself, if you cannot bring something of value to their team that will cause them to jettison another vendor, or as my kids say, to eat another vendor, then it is going to be very difficult to get a spot on a contract or on an opportunity.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one more question, and it is there a DOS long-range acquisition forecast? And if so, where can I find it?
So we have a procurement forecast, which is published once a year, usually right around Thanksgiving. I know that the Office of the Procurement Executive is working on a much more robust procurement forecast system. Probably stay tuned for it in 2024. It's a lot of work and a lot of processes that needs to align, but unfortunately we don't have anything better that's comprehensive. There is not an exemption. There is one bureau that does a really good job, OBO. They have a forecast for their major builds or rehabs, and that is on the OBO link that I provided earlier. And that is, it's a little high level, but it gives you an idea of where they're building stuff, or where they're building embassies and residences next.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Anna, for doing this presentation for us and enlightening us on what's happening.
There's another question. Yeah, there's another question. Dante, send me a note with that. I'll look it up for you.
Okay, Dante, hopefully you got that. All right, well, thanks, Anna. I'm going to send the presentation out to you all, and the recording will be available later this afternoon. I'd like to thank you all for your great questions. And don't forget to reach out to your PTAC counselor to assist you. And again, if you have any further questions that you'd like to forward to Anna, her contact information will be on the slides. So thanks, Anna. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.